All right, welcome to the Brian Howell and Matt Smith show. And Matt, we still haven't come up with a name, although there was a lot of good suggestions on our last video. So we should need to go through and like nail one down. I mean, we're halfway through the stinking season. We gotta figure something out here.
I liked Two Men in the Buffs. I thought that one was funny. But yeah, keep sending those in. If you got any other names, we'll pick one. I mean, we're gonna do it the rest of the year. So
Yeah,
unless you piss me off, Brian, so be careful.
yeah. Maybe this will be our last show. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, let's commit to having one by next week.
Okay, sounds
All right.
good. So final week for submissions, you're saying?
Yeah, let's do that. And
Okay.
we need to remember who gave it to us because whoever we pick, we got to give them a shout out. So
Yeah, sounds good.
well,
Sounds
hey,
good.
let's last week we talked about UCF and everything. That game feels like it was a month and a half ago. So we're done talking about that one. We're going to move on and talk about the future with the Buffs, and they are back to work. They obviously worked a little bit last week, but they are back to work this week as they've got Kansas State coming up on Saturday, 8:15 kickoff at Folsom Field on ESPN. Although, as you pointed out on Twitter, more likely about an 8:30 kickoff. They say 8:15, but those things always slide a little bit later because of what happens in previous games. So you were right to point that out. That I don't remember the last time there was a kickoff slated for that late that actually kicked off at that time.
Yeah, we'll have to pay attention. I'm not exactly sure which is on ESPN before it. I don't know. It's not Ohio State, Oregon, because that's NBC. Regardless, whichever game precedes CU and Kansas State, that's always it'll be a close game. It'll be going down to the wire, so it'll
Yeah,
probably start more like 8:30, maybe 8:45 ish at the latest. But it's gonna be a late one in Boulder on Saturday.
yeah, yeah. It is. And hey, night games, night games, night games. And then hey, they did announce today there is a day game next week. It just happens to be in Tucson where it's going to be 90 some degrees. So like
Yeah.
really, like the day game we get is going to be in Tucson in the middle of October.
Well,
I
it
mean,
was
come
hot
on.
last. It was hot last year in Tempe too, and that was
Right,
finished at
right,
night. So I don't think
right.
it's going to make that much of a difference. Arizona's going to be hot no matter what. Although hopefully in a couple of weeks, end of October ish, it starts to cool off. Maybe we'll get like an 85-degree
Well,
afternoon.
as of right now on AccuWeather.com, the projected temp is 91.
Okay,
And it is a 1 p.m. kickoff in Tucson, so 2 p.m.
that's
Mountain
right.
Daylight Time. So so it's going to be hot.
How did Arizona get away with just saying we're not going to subscribe to daylight savings? We're not doing
Uh,
that.
that could be a
I
whole
don't
other
know the
video, Matt.
backstory there.
That could be a whole other
Exactly.
video, and we're not going to get into that one. But we're going to talk more about Arizona next week, obviously. But
Yeah.
it is a night game, and I will say this: it's a late night, and I know all the fans complaining about like the late night, and I get it, I understand it. But for those of us covering it, that's like I hope to go to bed before the sun comes up.
Oh
Like
yeah, it'll be like a 4 a.m. bedtime. No
yeah.
doubt about it. Always
So
is.
those are late, and but even with
The
all
Stanford,
that,
what was Stanford? Stanford had to be pretty close to 8:15 because I remember I got home and finished my work at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's when I got the phone call that we had that nasty flood at one of our buildings. I remember that
yeah,
game very vividly. So that was a sleepless one. But yeah, it'll be a late one. Hey, you and I are night owls for the most part, though. You and I are always up pretty late texting, so it doesn't bother me. I know some folks out there, especially on the East Coast, it's gonna be like a 10:15 kick, which sucks.
right. Well,
So I
and
sympathize with you there.
I will say this, those of us that have lived out here forever may not totally understand like the East Coast time and all that stuff, but
Oh,
man,
it sucks.
when
It's
I
the
was out
worst.
when I was out in Orlando for that UCF game and like watching games late, I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like midnight and they're not even at halftime yet of a couple of these games. Like this is brutal. So I totally understood it that weekend. And so yeah, those 8:15 when you're gonna start really like at 10:30 Eastern.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
mean that's pretty brutal. So
It's brutal. It's
all you
brutal.
all you Buff fans that are in the Eastern time zone, we feel you on that one, having experienced it just last week. So get through it, take a nap on Saturday afternoon, and you'll be able to get through it because I think this is gonna be a good one, Matt. I think that the one thing I do like about this kickoff is Folsom at night. I
Oh
think
yeah.
is just it's on another level. I think that it's different than Folsom during the day, and I think that that part is going to help the Buffs. I like that it's a night game for the Buffs.
I think night games in general can be more electric, but especially at Folsom, the energy is
Yeah.
just way higher at night.
Right.
Maybe it's because
Yeah.
Boulder's just so beautiful
Right.
that during the day everybody's just kind of chilled out because how could you get the mountains right there? I mean, how could you be too stressed?
Right.
No, but at night it's going to be electric, and not only that, it'll have been almost 3 full weeks, really. I mean, considering this is at the end of the slate on Saturday, that fans haven't seen their team play at home, especially coming off what was the biggest win of the Coach Prime era down there at UCF. I imagine a very, very enthused fan base on Saturday night. Not to mention, this is a monster game with two 4-1 teams.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to talk about the future in this episode here, then it's definitely one of those that you keep your eye on with potential Big 12 implications even early in the season. Yeah, I know they're not. I know they're not. I
Yeah.
saw Coach Prime in the latest Well Off Media video reminding everybody that, look, as we mentioned last week, a fan only blows when you're hot. You know, you're
Yeah.
4-1. You start losing immediately, you reel off a couple of losses, narratives change quick. That's the beauty of sports, right? So you
Yeah.
got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny how I mean they've had 3 road games already. You look around college football, and there's some teams that haven't even left home yet. They've got 5 home games. There's a couple teams I've seen had 5 home games to start things off, and there's some teams that have barely left home. The Buffs have already had 3 on the road, so it does
That's
feel
a good
like.
point.
I mean, so to be 4-1 when you've played 3 of your games on the road already, I think is enhances a little bit what they've done at 4-1. But with that, it feels like forever since they've been at home.
Yeah, I will say that kind of is a little deceiving because one of those was CSU, and you're it's 45 minutes
Still,
away.
you're right. Yeah, I
Still, no, no,
know.
no, I get
Yeah,
it, I get it,
yeah,
I get it. But at the same time, they are a little bit more battle tested because they've had
yeah,
at least 3 raucous environments they've had to go into that are hostile for sure. And the last time Kansas State did that, it did not transpire well for them at BYU. Although, and I'm
right.
sure we'll talk about it, that game was a little fluky. I don't know if you've had a chance to go back and really
Yeah,
dig through all that one. That one was bizarre. They threw there were 2 turnovers with like less than a minute 15 in the first half. They come right back out of the locker room. They throw another terrible pick right to start the second half. Then there's the flukiest, punt return for touchdown I've ever seen. And, Kansas
right.
State never had a chance. So again, yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think these teams are pretty evenly matched at the moment in time without any
Yeah,
more results to go off of.
yeah. And the other thing too, yes, it was a fluky game, but they also K-State 2 road games. They were also at Tulane. Did not play great at Tulane either. They won the game, but they didn't play a great football game. So they haven't shown that
Yeah,
they can be a dominant team, on the road, and so or even a great team on the road. So
sure.
I think that there's a lot of that plays into it. But yeah, there's only 5 games to go off of. It's a better sample size than we had a month ago, that's for
That's true.
sure. And I will say that this is a game you look at coming into the season. A lot of people will say, "Oh yeah, K-State's got that." I think that people look at it now and say, "That's not such a given." I mean, I was even watching a video with some of the K-State. I don't know if they're media or like, but it was analysts, right? They were doing a video and they were talking about it, and they were asking about their confidence in this, and they're like, "Well, I'm not. I feel good about K-State winning, but I'm not overly confident. And so there's a little bit of that, like, well, we'll see with the Wildcats. So the Buffs definitely have a shot here to make a move in the Big 12. I mean, if they win this one, they're 3-0 in the Big 12. I mean, all bets are off going forward. I mean, this team can definitely
Oh
be in the
yeah.
race.
Yeah, this is like a gate opening type of a game if you pull
Yeah.
it off. It
Yep.
opens another level for sure. And if you lose, I mean, look, you're expected to lose. Kansas State's what's the line at now? I saw in some places it had dropped to even like 4.5. I saw it was at 6.5,
Yeah.
and it just kind of keeps coming down a little bit now.
I saw 5.5 yesterday. I haven't looked today.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, 5. I mean, look, that's still a lot of points on the road,
Mhm.
right? And when you're looking at both of these programs, they're both coming off pretty massive wins. Kansas State went into the bye after a 42-20 shellacking of Oklahoma State,
Yeah.
in Manhattan. So, it'll be interesting to see what this looks like because here comes another rushing football team. And we
Yeah.
talked about this last week, but this is the best version of that attack that Colorado will have seen. I believe after watching the tape, it's the best offense. I think they've
Yeah.
got the most mobile quarterback that Colorado's
Mhm.
going to have seen yet. And DJ Giddens, their running back, is a really good ball player. Now, defensively, I think it's interesting, it may sound simplistic and cliche, but I think whichever defense comes to play more probably is the team at the end of the day when we go and look back at the final box ends up coming out on top. It just feels that way based upon I think both of these offenses are going to have some success. I just do.
Yeah, I agree with you in different ways.
Yep.
I think this K-State defense is the best CU's seen at this point, and you could throw
You
Nebraska
do,
in
huh?
there actually. Well,
I would
the,
say Nebraska is the best
probably
defense they've
maybe
seen to this
Nebraska.
point.
Yeah. Um, let's say I would say it's the best defense they've seen during. It's better than any defense they've seen during that 3-game win streak. Let's put it that way. It's better than CSU. It's better than
Yeah, yeah,
Baylor's
no.
defense. Better than
It might be
UCF.
on
So
it might be on par with Baylor, but it's probably not that much different than I don't know. Their pass rush hasn't been overly effective. I think they still have 12 sacks in 5 games, which is a solid number. But I don't know. They just haven't also.
they've got a lot of pressures too, though, Matt. And I
Yeah, they
mean,
do. They do
and you know, as we've seen with Colorado's offensive line, those pressures can turn into sacks in a hurry sometimes. And so,
for
if they're
sure.
getting pressure on the quarterback,
Yep.
Colorado's offensive line still has a lot to prove there, and so you still have to watch out for that.
Yeah, and I think my point was I think their passing defense still has something to prove too as
Right?
as well, and
Yeah.
and which is why I think Colorado's offense will have some success certainly. But yeah, I mean, isn't that the story? Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme every week with this team.
Yeah.
If you can
Yeah.
keep two upright, then they got a pretty good chance. But you're right though,
Right.
because I watched that BYU game. And up until that like minute 15 mark left in the first half, it was all Kansas State. They were all over BYU. So it's a good point you bring up. They got a couple of linebackers that have shown well so far, and I
Yeah.
just think that there is some susceptibility to the outside. But of course, as it is every week, you've got to be able to give Shador a couple of seconds to figure out what's going on.
And they also, aren't a great throwing team on offense.
Yeah,
And Avery Johnson still coming along as a passer, but I think he's a better runner than a passer right now, and they're not lighting it up through the air, and so I think that plays a little bit into Colorado's strength on defense. That they like to have their corners out on an island one on one, and then load at the box and stop the run. And so I think that's going to help CU is that they don't have dynamic receivers that have gone off on people. So I think that it sort of plays into CU's strength a little bit.
definitely. One of the things they like to do, though, is they'll use a lot of crossing routes where it's coming off that play action. And if you
Yeah,
have trouble containing what they do, those can burn you, right? And they got a nice tight end, good size. This
yeah,
is going to be one of those games, I think, where you notice that Trevor Woods is redshirting this year, excuse me, this year. Would have been a game where I would expect he would have played quite a bit. But you do get Shiloh back in the secondary. So maybe Carter Stoutmeyer, we talked about that last week.
hmm,
Maybe there's some flip flop in there. Who knows what happens and what Robert Livingston has up his sleeve there. But I agree with you that Avery Johnson is he's a problem on the ground. He's got some quicks now. This is the type of guy that's beaten Colorado perennially on the ground, and hopefully they can keep him in contain. Because I kind of go back and you watch what they do, and you compare it to what Central Florida does with KJ Jefferson. Both
yeah,
running quarterbacks, both do it in very different ways. I think it's easier to keep contained on a guy like a KJ Jefferson. With Avery Johnson, he's a little bit more elusive, a little more slippery. So it's going to be a big week because they like to test the boundaries of your defense. And, I mean, we've seen Colorado be susceptible to jet sweeps at times and things like that. So it may not be the most downhill traditional attack, but they can do everything. They move their linemen.
yeah,
They like to
yeah.
try and put your defense in conflict. So again, I think this is the biggest test. Like I said, I think it's their best offense. Even if Johnson can struggle, like it kind of feels like he's got that Fowler Nicolosi trait where he might be good for one a game, and you better be ready for it because the one thing I did see on tape is when you flush him around, he gets a little bit more inaccurate and can
Yeah.
can make some riverboat plays, and that's where Colorado's defense has to be opportunistic on Saturday night.
Yeah, when you mean one a game, you mean one interception, obviously. Fallon Nicolosi sometimes too, but Avery
Yeah, that's a
Johnson,
good point. Yeah,
Avery Johnson, yeah, you got to be ready for that one. But yeah, I mean, I look at this team and I like DJ Giddens a lot. I think he's a really good running back, and a name we haven't mentioned. Dylan Edwards is back there too, and Dylan Edwards is a threat, as we know. We saw him as a threat with the Buffaloes. I think he's even more of a threat in the K-State offense because he doesn't have to be the man. He can be that complement to DJ Giddens, so I'm looking forward to seeing him again because he was a fun player to watch. it'd be nice to not see him go off and have a bunch of big touchdowns, things like that. But he certainly is capable. So you got to watch out for that as well. But you're right, Avery Johnson. This is the fourth running quarterback they've played, but I think he's the best.
Yep. Yep. I don't even think it's close. I don't
Yeah,
even think it's close. And again, even if he gets a little loose with it in the passing game, he can still throw it now.
yeah,
And I think their leading receivers got 17 receptions, which is
yeah,
clearly they're a run dominant team. I think they're fourth in the country yards per carry right now. I think they're over 6. They got 4 guys who they regularly have carry the ball over 5 yards per carry,
yeah,
3 of them at about 7.
yeah.
So this comes down to, well, just how
One
improved
one
is
of
that?
those one of those being the quarterback.
100%. Yeah, which
Yeah,
is what I mean. Like 4 guys who are
yeah,
regularly
yeah,
toting
yeah,
the rock are peeling them off 7 per. And
yeah.
this is a big one. And you heard Coach Prime yesterday. I think it was from yesterday's practice with the video they released today, talking about, hey, I think he even pointed at Bentley and Hill Green and said, this is a big one for you guys. And it is,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of plays you see where Kansas State will do a great job getting the offensive line moving. Somebody doesn't fill the right spot and bam, Giddens is gone. And
Yeah,
and those are the type of teams that I would say have given the Buffs problems in the past. Now, again, they did a great job with UCF and stopping that rushing attack last week. It's just, can you replicate that week in and week out? And I think, there's a lot of people that go, well, you didn't see that coming last week, so why would you predict it not to happen this week? And I go, well, you've got a higher caliber of opponent, and the price of poker
yeah,
continues to go up week after week after week, and it's just more talent, right? I think RJ Harvey was good, but DJ Giddens is really good. And the one thing that I think really hurts Colorado is when you're talking about a quarterback who can get to the edge. That's a
yeah.
problem when you're in man coverage, because that's
Mhm.
typically the one guy you're not accounting for. So if you see Avery Johnson busting loose on Saturday night, probably not a surprise. Now, that being said, you've got to do the best that you can to contain him. I hope they get Deion Hayes back. I hope he's back after 2 weeks.
Yeah,
If you can get him back, Okunlola did a great job in the run game. So did Arden Walker and BJ Green.
yep.
Those guys, another huge night upcoming for them, as well as Barnes and Wonkwo and Cokes and Tawfiq Thomas in the middle. And this is a big front 7 game for Colorado, because if you can control the line of scrimmage defensively, you're going to put yourself in a good position. And that's what I'll say about defense. I do have some offensive thoughts, though.
Yeah, I agree with you defensively. Taj McCoy as well, coming off a
Yeah,
nice
thank you.
game. He played really well also. And so I
And
will
he could
say,
be a big one, by the way. Sorry not to interrupt, but with his
yeah,
speed, he's the
yeah,
fastest, I think, out of that group. So that
yeah.
would be a bit that he'll probably play a role for sure.
I
Might be
also
one of those
think,
games where
yeah,
you have to spy Avery Johnson,
right.
spy him a little bit. Yeah.
But I also think, you mentioned this is a game that you'd like to have Trevor Woods. I agree with you. I will say, first off, by the way, if you notice in the well off video, you saw Trevor Woods and Jeremiah Brown both at practice. So these are not guys that have decided to redshirt and they're going to enter the portal and they've left the team. So I think that's a good sign for both those guys that they might be back for this next year. That's a little side note. But I will say I like your point about Carter Stoutmeyer. With Shiloh back, is Carter Stoutmeyer the guy that goes into that Trevor Woods type of role? Because then you probably have a little more speed than even Trevor Woods in that spot. And so, or does Shiloh go up to that spot? I don't know, but you've got some other options there that might be even speedier than Trevor Woods, to where maybe one of those guys, spies Avery Johnson. So they could be in that dime a little bit more because you got guys like that. I mean, Carter Stoutmeyer to me has earned playing time. You can't
Yeah.
take him off the field, in my opinion. So I like the options there. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they play that. But I do think this is a good test for the defense. And when you mention, hey, we hadn't seen it before last week, I think there's one of two ways you go with this. One is like there's a little bit of nerves that, like, that was the best they've looked under Coach Prime. Can they do it again? Right? Or was that a one-off? Or the other side is that's the best they looked. Can they take a lot of confidence from that? And you see that sometimes, to where they've seen it and now they say, whoa, we can do it. And they keep doing it. And so I hope that we see that part of the Buffs, to where they gain a lot of confidence off that performance rather than it being that one-off. Because if they play like they did against UCF, they're going to win.
Yeah, entering the bye week off of a performance like that, I think, to your point, it can go multiple ways, and it's all about how fast you can ratchet the intensity back up while
Yeah.
still having gotten the rest that you wanted. As you mentioned, they did a little work last week, but bodies definitely got a chance to. Hopefully,
Yeah.
everybody kind of took advantage of that, and did the right things recovery wise, treatment wise. And so now when you get back, I think mentally it's just how fast can you dial back in and plug back into the matrix, Brian, right?
Right.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
That's really the key here and kind of get the wheels turning again. And which team between Kansas State and Colorado is going to be able to do that more effectively? I think the one thing that we do have to acknowledge here with Kansas State is Chris Kleinman and that coaching staff, because I have tremendous respect. Not that I didn't for Gus Malzahn, but I really do for the style of football that these guys play. They're
Right.
no joke, that coaching staff. And not that,
Yep.
again, this is nothing against Malzahn. I just think you're dealing with a tighter knit program that has
Hmm.
clearly had a long-standing history of success. And a lot of what you saw against North Dakota State might be kind of similar. So in a way, I
Right.
think that game was a blessing to have on the calendar because you'll be better prepared for this. They do, it's not the same offense, but there's some similar concepts. So you're not going to be unfamiliar. And you know what they want to do. They want to shrink the game. They want to grind the clock. They want to extend drives. They want to keep Shadur on the sideline offensively and Travis, offensively on the sideline. They're not going to be able to do that defensively. The
Yeah.
point is, though, is it's one of those games where no margin for error, really. You have to capitalize on opportunities and you probably have to generate some takeaways because, again, I think this is the best football team overall, even though I think there are some weaknesses you can exploit. And I think 5.5 is still probably a bit too big. I'd probably have
Yeah.
that number around 4 or 3 at the moment in time. And until Colorado goes out and proves, okay, we can stack 2 wins against 2 good teams, I know people will be frustrated. Well, people said UCF, was going to beat them by 14, but look at what
Hmm.
UCF did the next week at Florida. UCF got hammered at Florida. Part of the reason that you don't want to overreact too much in the early season is you just don't know who teams are. And we spoke about this last week. I told you I don't know who UCF is yet coming off of
Right.
that win.
Hmm.
And, it didn't really boost my confidence that there are any sort of great shakes the week after at Florida. And that's kind of part of how and not again, I'm not saying they're a bad football team. The point is you just never know what it's going to look like in college football, especially when you've only played 3 games, which is the situation there. Now it's different here. I've got a
Yeah.
lot of respect for them, and again, it's another test for the coaching staff, Brian.
Yeah. I will say this too, though, and I know you're not like downplaying UCF, but like, I will say that I think sometimes it's hard to say, well, look at what UCF did the next week. They weren't that good of an opponent. But I think UCF obviously is going. They've had 6 guys that have left the team since
Yeah,
that CU game. They decided to enter the transfer portal and
good
leave the
point.
team, and so they were having some internal things going on last week too.
For sure.
Going into that Florida game, and I think that I don't, for lack of a better term, I don't love this term when people say this, but for lack of a better term, CU might have somewhat broke UCF a little bit
Maybe.
in that they UCF was riding high. CU did that to him. You have some guys. Even I mean, there was a guy that I can't remember the guy's name, Townsend maybe, that
Yeah.
has had a nice touchdown against the Buffs, had played well, and entered the portal 2 days later. And so
Sure.
a little bit of cracks in the UCF. So I still give CU a lot of credit. That was a good win. I think UCF still gonna be a good team, but um,
I'll say this, the Buffs exposed them in a lot of
yes,
ways.
yeah,
That's what they did. I don't know about, I mean, breaking
right.
them, sure, whatever you want to say. I think expose them is what they did. And then
That's a better word. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and so I would agree with you. Again, I'm not trying to downplay it, but it's just one of those. I'm not saying hey, it doesn't make
right,
it doesn't hold weight because they didn't play well the next week. But again, you just don't know who they are. It's the same reason why at the end of the year, people last year talked about TCU. It's like, well, at the beginning of the year, they looked like the national champion runner-up from last year, but at the end of the year, they didn't even make a bowl game, and that's why
yeah,
you have people pointing to that. It is an argument that gets used, so I think it is worth keeping track of, as are the rest of the teams, like Colorado
right.
State fumbling it in overtime the other night in Corvallis, which was a real shame. Hated to see that.
Well, and it's you make a good point in that up to this point, previous 5 opponents that CU's had, I think you can look at all of them and say, what do you really have here? Because North Dakota State, even though their program, they had some new people, they had a new head coach. So you're like, what are they really going to look like? So every opponent you've had some like, what are they really like?
Mm-hmm.
This might be the first opponent CU's faced that what Kansas State is.
Agreed. I think
You
that's a
know
good point
exactly
too.
what Kansas State is. And so, and in a lot of ways, I like that you bring up North Dakota State because that's where Kleiman came from, right? And I think Kansas State's a lot like North Dakota State in that they are not going to beat themselves. And we saw in the
Yeah.
well-off videos, Coach Prime after that NDSU game pointing out to his team, look at these guys. Look at how they're flying to the ball. Look at how they're playing like a team. And he's like, that's what I want you guys to do. Well, that's what K-State does too. And K-State's going to be one of those teams that doesn't beat themselves. K-State, we have not been in the Big 12 as CU beat writers and reporters for a long time, but K-State in some ways reminds me of Utah in a lot of ways because you know what you're going to get out of K-State.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as Utah. They're going to play tough defense, they're going to run the football, and they might be able to burn you in the pass a little bit as well. So you
They got
better
a good
strap
tight
it
end.
up. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, you better strap it up against K-State. Yeah, because
Yep.
they're not going to beat themselves, and you better go play a crisp football game. Now, that BYU game, I think, was an anomaly, like you mentioned. K-State beat themselves a little bit in that one, but you better strap it up against K-State because they're going to bring it.
Yeah, and I think offensively, there's a few things I wanted to touch on too. I think this is a big week for the quick game, and this is a big week for what Shador talked about after the game in Orlando when he said, sometimes I just kind of have to wait to see what the defense is doing before I get too overeager. And he was
Yeah.
talking about his, interception he threw on the first drive of the game. That's a big one. I think drive starters,
Yeah.
that's how you eliminate Kansas State's ability to get pressure because you're right. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily just the sacks and getting home. It's the amount that they're able to manipulate the pocket. And the more you can do to circumvent that by just stopping them in their tracks, by not giving them an opportunity to do that, I see some big holes in the running game too on film that you can expose these guys with. Again, I'm not wowed by their defense. Like I would definitively say Nebraska's better than them, and I would
Yeah.
put Baylor. I really wouldn't put Baylor that far off. I mean, in a lot of ways, I just based upon what I have seen, I don't think it's like that intimidating. But the point is, if you
Yeah.
don't have a good game plan, you will get beat by that defense, and you will make them
Mhm.
look like they're better than they are because they do have talent. It's all about stacking from a coaching perspective as well and layering off of what you've already shown on film. Hey, what
Right.
wrinkles can we have? And I'm looking forward to seeing the game plan here coming up off of this bye week because we know what happened last year. And I think this is another
Mhm.
big test for me in a lot of ways, both for Shermer, Livingston, and for Coach Prime about can you get this group? Okay, you took a timeout. You got another one coming up in a month. Okay. How
Yeah.
well can you restart the engines here? Because you're going to have to shut her down and ramp it back up again here coming up. So I'm looking forward to it because this is I don't know. Kyle Whittingham, I have great respect for. I mean, Kansas and Leipold, that's a strange situation. I would have never thought they would have started 1-5 in a
Yeah.
million years.
Yep.
But this might be the coaching staff I have the most respect for around the rest of the Big 12. Quite frankly, I just think they do things the right way there. And I'm looking forward to seeing this team because this profiles to me to be a classic if everybody shows up to the party. And based upon what we've seen from Colorado starting to develop an identity, I think the Buffs have something for Kansas State that they're not quite ready for yet. And
Yeah.
to your point a little bit earlier, if you're able to carry over that confidence, okay, that's a massive step in the right direction. And what
Yeah.
that's going to do is if you start quick, you're going to instantly fall into that feeling. And here we go again. And that's how you get into this rhythm. And that's why I say quick game drive starters. Let's take the path of least resistance to get some points on the board here early and then start to open things up a little bit. I think it's
Yeah.
important to get up early. The one thing you don't want to do is get behind because then you might be in a Baylor situation where you're clawing back at the end or a North Dakota State situation where you've got to overcome, right? And it takes some gritty, hard work to do it. And Kansas State's the best of those teams. And comebacks aren't guaranteed. It's easy
Yeah.
to come back. It's not easy to come back and win. If it
You're
was,
right.
everybody would do it. So I'm
Although,
looking forward to it.
although they got the guy I most trust in that situation. So
Of course.
I'll also say this though, that because what you're saying about Shador and how he's like, I like to be able to look at the defense and see it makes me step back and say, all right, maybe we shouldn't worry too much about a slow start. If they go 3 and out early, if they do this, he's figuring things out and he'll get it figured out. I,
Less
you know,
margin for error.
I know
That's
that,
all
but like,
against better teams.
my point is like, I'm okay with a slow start on offense as long as the defense isn't giving up points. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
don't want to fall behind 14-0, but if it's 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, okay, fine. They slow out of the gates offensively. I trust Shador and Pat Shermer, that team, that duo, to figure things out and kind of get the offense going after that. But the one thing I love about this game at this point in time is what is the position CU's in, where they've got confidence now. They're coming off their best performance in a long time, and now you're facing this team with a real shot to prove who you are and prove what you got. So let me ask
Yeah.
you a question that sort of goes off to a tangent, but I've got a point here.
Okay.
Um, right, if you looked at it right now, the wackiness of the Big 12,
Hmm.
who would you say are your top two, three teams that you would favor to win the conference right now?
Kansas State is one of them. I mean,
Mhm.
tough to ignore Iowa State.
Yep.
And based upon what we've seen from Colorado, well, BYU I'm putting in there too, probably. And then I'd probably put Colorado and Arizona maybe in the tier below that. Colorado's got to prove to me that they're going to separate from Arizona. I think
Yeah.
these next 2 weeks are a big 2 weeks for that in particular.
So my point is the first team you mentioned is K-State. K-State is one of those top contenders for the league title, right?
Yep.
And so I love that this game is right now because they're coming, CU is coming in with momentum. And if you beat this team, you make a bigger statement
Oh,
than you
yeah.
made in Orlando, and you can legitimately go into the second half of the season saying that you are a contender for the Big 12. And I think
100%.
I think this would be a massive game because you know, everybody will look at what CU's done to this point, and again, even watching the K-State guys, they're looking, well, yeah, but all they've done is they beat North Dakota State, Baylor, CSU, and then a not very good UCF team. Nobody can question this win if you get a win this week.
Right.
Nobody can look at that
Yeah,
and say,
there's no asterisk, there's no
right.
justification. No, that you're going to beat a good football team if you win Saturday.
And this could legitimately be Coach Prime's signature win. You know,
Hmm.
his first big win as the Buffs head coach. And so yeah, I think I love this game right now because it's a proving ground right in the middle of the season. And I think it's a massive game for the Buffs, massive opportunity for the Buffs to go out there and prove themselves.
I think every week is right now, quite frankly, just because of the
It is. And
scrutiny.
that's what Coach Prime would say, right?
Yeah, but I think he's right though. Like I've been
Mhm.
thinking about this more and more and more. And first of all, he is right because
Yeah.
from the team perspective, every game has to be the biggest one.
Right.
But for
Yeah.
them, because of the scrutiny they're under, everyone's just waiting for them to fail. So yes, I think as especially if you keep stacking wins, the pressure just keeps mounting and mounting and mounting. But you don't really pay attention to any of that stuff. You just got
Right.
to do what's inside the room. That stuff doesn't matter to him. I know that. But you're right. As far as the national narrative and how this conference is viewed and how each one of these teams are viewed,
Mhm.
you're going to hear coming out of this that whoever wins is, I don't know, you probably put them in the conversation as the favorite. I don't know if CU is going to be called the favorite while you have an undefeated Iowa State team and BYU is playing okay. And,
Yeah.
it's going to be this one, like I think a lot of them, this one in particular, you win this, it's one of those, oh, we can really take you seriously now, as opposed to,
Yeah.
oh, we can take you seriously as a team that should win 7 to 8. Like this shows me, are you a contender or are you a 7 to 8 win type of team? Because even if they do lose and they lose a close one to Kansas State, I don't think it holds a ton of bearing on the rest of the season because
Mhm.
I think after this, and I don't want to, speak too quickly. They shouldn't have too many teams left from a rushing standpoint that I think are so intimidating to the point where they could at least disable what you do. You'll probably have a
Yeah.
lot of shootouts the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of Utah.
Yeah. I mean, Texas Tech's got a pretty darn good running back. Taj Brooks is
Yeah.
pretty good. Oklahoma State, although Gordon's not playing real well, but they've got the
No,
ability.
and they're
But
going to follow. That is a
yeah,
team, by the way, that is a candidate to implode by the time they see you.
yeah, yeah. No, well,
100%.
if they're not already,
But
right?
that's what I'm saying is like by the
Yeah,
time Kansas, I feel like is in the same boat. Give them another month and a half. Who knows what both of those programs look like?
right. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule. Look at those last two games. Look like they were going to be somewhat brutal
Mm-hmm.
at Kansas and home against Oklahoma State. Right now, they look like you better win those.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Especially that makes, this week even bigger too, I think, because if you can take care of business now, I think the schedule sets up for you because you got a 3-pack, K-State in Tucson, home to Cincinnati, and another breather coming.
Yeah,
That's like a perfect time for a bye week if you're rolling. And so I look, I'm encouraged. And it's the reason why I do have Colorado in this game, despite what we're talking about. I think you and I uh CU fans just have to understand, especially the newer ones, that it's just been a long time since Colorado has had moments like these and met the moment on a consistent basis. Normally there's a letdown coming. So in the back of my mind, there's that CU history part of me that is never going to escape. But I don't know that it applies to this because you have the best quarterback in the country, in my
Yeah.
opinion, the best player in the country. You have a defense that's, I mean, firmly trending upwards. Your offense, your attack, your game plan, your approach, it's the best it's been since Coach Prime has gotten here.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where, yeah, I am picking Colorado in this game. And sorry not to, I know we'll eventually get there, but
Yeah.
spoiler alert, I've got the Buffs in this one until they don't. They're hot right now. I think they've got their finger on the pulse. I think they're pressing the right buttons. And as you mentioned, the beauty of having the bye week this early was everyone around the country got to sit back and watch everyone else as opposed to comparing Shadur and Travis to everyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Now there's a reason why Travis Hunter didn't play last week and his Heisman odds jumped because everybody watched and went, well, where's the exciting guy? Oh, right. He's not
Right.
playing today outside of
Right.
Janty.
Right.
And with Shadur, you watch Jalen Milroe take an L in Vanderbilt, right? You watch Carson Beck in Georgia, and it's just, you watch these guys around the country, you go, or do we have any good quarterbacks? Oh, right. He's just
Well,
not playing this week.
Cam
And
Ward did have a really nice finish, though.
yeah, but the only reason he had to have that finish
I
is
know.
part of
I
it was
know.
because how he played in the first half.
I know. I
Uh,
know.
you just never you never see
Yeah.
from Shador. Like
Yeah.
you'll never see Shador played so bad that he has to go dig his team out of it.
Yeah.
Never. I haven't seen that one time,
Yeah.
even in their 8 losses. I wouldn't put any and I'm talking about last year. I wouldn't put any of them on him. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, he could have played better, but as far as being the
Right.
primary reason they lost, Cam Ward, I've seen that from Cam Ward, and it's not saying that he didn't come up
Yeah.
clutch because he did, but
Mhm.
he did not look good in that first half. So
Yeah. And, uh, obviously he threw a really bad pick six against Nebraska, but I still don't think he was the reason they lost. I mean, CU just
no,
didn't come out and play a very good football game in
no,
that first half. So,
their
yeah,
offensive line was the reason they lost that game, in my opinion.
right. And, they just didn't have a great first half all around. Right. But yeah, this is gonna be an interesting game for the Buffs. I mean, I like the matchup for Colorado. I think it's a really fun matchup. I'm excited to have this matchup back. I don't know about you. We'll get into predictions here in a minute, but like, this is one of the games I was excited about for being in the Big 12 again. Was
Mhm.
getting the Kansas State matchup back, and I know uh, good friend Matt McChesney. When they got back to the Big 12, I mean, he texted me. He was super excited. Like he wants Kansas State. He was like, man, those games were physical and tough. And so there's a lot of those old Buffs that you're excited about having Kansas State back on the schedule.
Mhm. I'm glad it's here. I'm glad it's here. I'm glad
Yeah.
I don't have to take the
Oh
road trip
yeah.
to Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
the Little Big Apple.
so trivia question for you.
Okay.
Kansas State's number 18. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, real quick, CU played 6 ranked teams last year. This is the first one they've got this year. It's
Yep.
crazy. Week 6. Um, do you know the last time CU beat a top 20 team at home? Not ranked, the top 20.
Did they even do that in 2016? I don't even know if they did that.
Nope.
No, I don't think so.
Washington
No,
State and
no.
Utah. Washington State and Utah were both ranked,
With
but they were like
23,
but they
yeah,
were
and
like
22.
22 and something like that.
Gosh, it's got to be a while.
It's been a while.
You- I don't know. Tell me.
Kansas in
Kansas,
2009.
Todd Reesing?
Yeah.
Is that game?
I
It
think
was that one or Georgia, right? That was all I could think of.
No,
Was
Georgia
even
wasn't ranked.
that
Georgia
high?
was bad when they
Okay.
came in
All
here,
right.
but it was
I was just trying to
2009.
think.
Yeah, 2009 Kansas. They were number 17. If I'm not mistaken, that was a KU team that came in 5-0, and CU beat them, and they finished 5-7.
Yeah, no, they
I
finished
think.
horribly. Well, that
Um,
was the win that everybody talks about CU to use your word breaking Nebraska's program. That
yeah,
was again they did that to Kansas too because after that, I mean, it went downhill for years because that
yeah.
it was Todd Reesing still then, right?
I
Or
think
no?
so. I think so.
Okay. Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't remember KU. I remember it was the Tyler Hansen game, right? Wasn't that kind of his?
Yeah.
That was a breakout for Tyler Hansen, but
That's a long time ago, Brian.
yeah, October 7th. So it was almost 15 years ago, almost to the day. October
Yeah.
17th, 2009, number 17 Kansas beat them 34-30. CU's lost 12 in a row since then at home to top 20 teams.
Do you have the games listed in front of
Yeah.
you? The
Yeah.
losses? Read them, will you?
Well, so let's see, starting from the Kansas game, okay? The next one was 2011. Number 9 Oregon comes in here, beats them
Mm-hmm.
45-2.
Mm-hmm. I remember
And
that game.
now listen to this trend real quick, because listen
Yeah.
to all the blowouts until we get to the two from last year. Okay. 2012, Stanford comes in here, 48 nothing.
Mm-hmm.
2013, number 2 Oregon, 57-16.
Mm-hmm.
2014, number 16 Arizona State, 38-24. 2015, number 9 Stanford, 42-10. I think that
Yep.
was Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
2017, number 7 Washington, 37-10. Later 2017, USC, number 15,
Yep.
38-24.
Yep.
2018, number 9 Washington State with Gardner Minshew, 31-7.
Yep.
2022, the horrible Buffs team, number 8 Oregon, 49-10. And
Bo Nix.
number 14 Utah, 63-21. And then you get to last year, number 8 USC, 48-41.
Mm-hmm.
And number 16 Oregon State, 26-19.
Number 8 USC. Did we
Yeah,
ever have that one wrong?
right. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only two close games in that 12 game losing streak were the two last year.
Yep. Yep.
So now I
No,
know
it's
that
been a house of horrors playing against
you
some of the
could look
top
at
teams
it
in
and
the
say,
country.
you could look at it and say both those two games last year were not super close. They finished close, but they didn't play close throughout the day, but still they were 1 point games. And so yeah, 12 game losing streak. So my point is the Buffs are due to be the top 20 team at home.
Just because they are doesn't mean they will. I think we've learned that lesson over the 12-game win streak
We have.
or losing streak. But
Yeah.
yes, I mean, look, I've got them. And again, I go back to I just think this is a pivotal moment for them.
Yeah.
You have
Mhm.
so much momentum for you right now. Everything is trending the right direction. Now's the time. At the beginning of the year when the schedule came out, I went, okay, thank goodness you had this one at home. If this one was on the road, it might be a different
Yep.
story.
Mhm.
However, this one at home, with the form they're bringing into this game, it's the best that I've felt about this game since seeing it on the schedule. So much so where I'm going to trust their momentum. And I hope it doesn't burn me because I'm going to put myself out there and say Shedeur Sanders is going to come up with a monster game. And this game plan, it's going to be ball out. We're moving. I think a lot of this is going to be keeping Kansas State on their heels, dictating to them, not letting them dictate to you. I think that's a big part of it. And a lot of that has to do with how their line plays. It'll be interesting to
Yeah.
see what the five are that roll out against Kansas State. That's for sure.
Yeah. Because who knows, week to week, right?
I have no
So
idea.
yeah. So let's go prediction. You got the Buffs. What's your score?
I don't. I feel like 37-34 sounds about right, but 34 points would be a whole heck of a lot for Colorado's defense to surrender based upon the form that they're in. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go lower than that. I'll say give me 34-29 Colorado.
Okay. I'm right there with you. I'm going Colorado. I'm going with the momentum, like you said, that they have. And when I looked at the preseason schedule, or look at the schedule in the preseason, I penciled in the loss at UCF and also this one. I thought that this would be a tough 2 game stretch for them. Well, they got the UCF one, and I think the momentum that they gained from that is going to help them in this one. And I like the Buffs. I love the way they're playing right now. I think they come home and get the win. I also think it's gonna be close. But I had 31-28. So I think it's gonna be a good football game. And fans aren't gonna want to go anywhere. I don't think it's gonna be a late night for everybody, but I don't
No.
think they're gonna want to go
Yeah.
anywhere.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Last Saturday was a little boring. I mean, it was like, okay, I mean, nice bye week. I know you got a family and you got kids,
Yeah.
so probably wasn't all that boring. But it's like, all right, all these other teams. Let's watch the main event here. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope they got better
Well,
this week.
it was funny too because you speak of the bye week, just to go off
Yeah.
another tangent here. Tried on Saturday. I'm going to get away from college football, get away from the Buffs. This is awesome. Saw my older son run a cross country meet. Saw the other son, play a doubleheader in baseball, and then we went up to Estes Park and went and looked at the elk and all that stuff, just the fall colors. And I'm in a parking lot, at one of our stops in Estes, and there's Cristiano Palazzo, the Buffs kicker. I'm like, I still can't get away from the Buffs, but I ended up chatting with him a little bit, and it was great to see him. So, shout out to him because he and his fiance were actually getting engagement pictures taken
Oh wow, very
up there.
nice.
So that was pretty nice. But yeah, so I couldn't escape the Buffs totally, but it was good to run into Cristiano.
How old were you when you got married?
26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously, I mean, when you know, I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of married guys on the Buffs team or guys that are now engaged. Like
Yeah.
Travis is engaged. Jace
Yeah.
Feely we saw get married. There's a few others that are married. So yeah. Um, when you know, you know.
Yeah. That's all I have to say on that one.
But hey,
I, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I
Oh, I
just
was just
say,
gonna say I spent my weekend watching football and
yeah.
catching up on some of my favorite shows. Shout out Slow Horses in the comments. If you've got any other good shows that you're watching right now, I'm a bit of an aficionado in that category, and I'll always take a good recommendation. I know we're very different in that regard, but yeah,
Hey, there's another video idea for your channel. You ought to do
reviews, movie
TV
reviews.
TV reviews, TV and movie reviews.
Let me tell you what's bothering. Let me tell you what Tom Cruise is up to this week.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that. The Tom
Yeah.
Show.
Yeah, there you go.
Just the Tom Show. And that's the
Yeah. For those who don't know, Matt's a huge Tom Cruise fan, Top Gun,
yeah.
Mission Impossible. He's seen them all.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. You should. I'm surprised you haven't.
I
Have you seen them
yeah,
all?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Checked them
I
all
would
off?
say I'm more of a Top Gun fan than Mission Impossible, but I like the Mission
Okay.
Impossible movies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Ethan
And
Hunt, he's coming out the
yeah,
final installment next year.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
good stuff.
Good stuff in the comments. Always take watching recommendations. Know that about me, YouTubers.
All
And
right.
like
Well,
and subscribe Brian's channel. Like Brian's channel. Subscribe to his channel. Brian's the
and
best.
Matt's as well. Like and subscribe to this channel and to Matt's channel. And hey, let's get out of here. We both got the Buffs winning a game this week. Late night on Saturday. Let's hope it doesn't go into early Sunday morning. We will, but let's hope the game does not. But Matt, I'll see you at Folsom on Saturday night.
I'll see you tomorrow morning with the Coach
Yeah,
Prime press conference.
we do have media availability.
I'm sure he's missed us terribly.
Oh,
I'm sure
terribly.
he's missed us terribly.
I'm sure when he was down home in Dallas,
Wonder
posting the
what Matt
pictures.
and Brian are doing this week. Maybe I should give him a call. What's up, guys?
I bet he
No,
was sitting down in Texas as he's posting the pictures of his pool and everything, and thinking, should I call and invite those guys down here? I bet they're bored. I bet they'd
Bye,
love.
everybody.
Matt, we'll see you tomorrow, and
Sounds good.
Buff fans, we'll see you Saturday, and it should be a fun one.
I'm sure he was thinking that. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
he was thinking that. Yeah. God,
Yeah.
Matt and Brian would have loved today. This is a gorgeous day. Wish I could share it with Matt and Brian. All right, we'll talk to you
Let's
guys.
do off season, or yeah, let's do bi-week media availability down here.
Down here. I can't believe we didn't get the phone call. You know what?
Right.
Now that you mention it, let me go ahead and check missed callers. Oh, by the way, shout out to everybody in Florida. We're all thinking about you. We just were
Yes.
down there dealing with that hurricane last week, and y'all are about to get hit again harder than last week. So our thoughts are with you.
Well,
sure.
not only Florida, but Georgia and the Carolinas as well. So
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. It's I got a friend in Tampa that I talked to this morning, and they're getting out of Dodge, so it's they expect a rough one. So we're thinking about you.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks, Matt. We'll see you later this week, and Buff fans, we'll see you on Saturday.